Deal with it yourself. My parents are clearly more important than you. That stormy day, my husband, Carter, shouted at me as I stood anxious, holding my daughter in the middle of the storm. Remember the sense of intense rage that flowed through me at that time. My name is Grace. I'm 30 years old, and I work as a dietitian at a Boston-based school. I've been married to Carter for 4 years, and he works for a company in Boston. We live in a Boston suburb where we have a 2-income family arrangement, but no children, so our life was relatively easy and straightforward. 2 years after marrying, one evening, Carter came home and started talking to me in the kitchen while I was preparing dinner. "Hi, Grace, can we talk for a minute?" "What's wrong with that? Dinner is almost ready." "Just wait a minute," I said carelessly. However, Carter insisted, "It's something really important. I'm going to be transferred to work next year." "What do you mean, unilateral?" "That's all of a sudden." "Where?" Shockingly, I asked. "It's my hometown in Chicago." "Chicago? Isn't that too far?" "Yeah, well, as soon as you're a licensed professional, you can work from anywhere, so you'll come with me, won't you?" "They're definitely more justifiable than mine, though. Truthfully, fortunately, I am a dietitian who is not tied to work in the literal sense. That is, if my license doesn't expire, it shouldn't be hard to find a place to work. However, it's not easy to prepare myself to leave the current job or to adapt to any situation. Ma'am had informed her employer of her intention to transfer, an event that had turned nearly certain, having been promptly advanced without regard for my circumstances, which was enjoyable for all participants. I was not eager to leave my current place of employment, but I was not prepared to live apart from Carter. We were in the early stages of our marriage. I then quit my job and made up my mind to go with Carter. Several months had passed since we received the company's notification that the transfer would occur the following month, and began preparing to relocate to Chicago. As I prepared, I asked Carter what was bothering me. "Hey, Carter, you mean the address over there is already decided, right?" "About the address, we haven't looked for a house yet." "But if it's a company transfer, it's a leased apartment or something like that, right?" He had completely forgotten when he replied. "Oh, didn't I inform you yesterday, Grace?" I asked in a bad mood. "What?" I asked, alarmed. "When we move, we're going to live with my parents," Carter said to me. "Whoa, what? Really?" "Don't worry. It's a residence where they live with you." He spoke with an indifferent expression. His words made me disbelieve my ears. How come he forgot to mention this part until now? "What did you just say?" "A house designed for us to live together." "What are you talking about?" "You cannot just tell me this," I asked in disbelief. Carter looked at me like I was being dramatic for nothing. "It is fine. I told you, a house built for us to live together. It even has separate entrances and spaces to have our privacy and a separate life." Carter's reckless words shocked me utterly. "That's not all. Many other things." I stopped talking. "Wait, where did you even get that house?" With an indolent expression, Carter answered, "I ordered it to be built." "What? And in my name?" It was even more than I feared. That made me speechless. "You had this house built for me?" "Yes, I called the house to be built in my name. I could let him make it without me, but I could not think it was a reality." "What do you mean?" Despite the fact that the thought of starting a new life in another city alone terrified me, living with my in-laws never even crossed my mind. "It's right at the moment, all the talk with the builder's architect. There's nothing to do," Carter arrogantly repeated those words. The house was almost done, and my in-laws were getting ready to leave the other house. I could not do anything because they had already started packing, and the move was scheduled and that day was drawing closer. Our new life began without considering my thoughts or complaints. Even though I found a job, and it had already been a month since he revealed it, the house where we were to live seemed not to be suitable for us. A river was nearby with a lovely picture, but the house seemed to be built for the in-laws. Rooms were separated, and there were kitchens in each one, but the counter tables were arranged in a low line for my mother-in-law, causing back pain due to a reverend. It was simple to realize that Linda had influenced the house's internal factor. I have always been a fan of Scandinavian design, and I already had a list of requirements for the house, but clearly neither space was considered mine, since even the wallpaper was not a simple color, as I preferred, but a flowery pattern in the style of William Morris. Who on earth wanted this wallpaper in our space every day? I sighed as I looked at what Carter had in mind. Oh, all women want this kind of fancy stuff, right? My mom sure has great taste. It was a good idea to let her pick the design. Don't you think so? Carter shared his opinion, nodding in pleasure. I was baffled. Has Carter ever seen me during these years? Apparently not, if this is what he thought would suit me. Nevertheless, the wallpaper was just the beginning. The worst part was visiting my parents-in-law. Even though the house design was meant to have separated dining spaces, every dinner my parents-in-law would sit at my end. Even if that was bearable, their comments were unbearable. Every day they would eat and then immediately criticize my cooking. Grace, sweetie, isn't this meal a bit too salty? Mark, my father-in-law, would ask, and Linda, my mother-in-law, would pick up right where he left off. Oh, absolutely. I mean, are you trying to give us kidney failure? What a joke. I was flustered. I'm sorry, I just wanted to try a new recipe. To which Mark, grinning like a man with a secret, would voice his unsolicited advice. You always say that, Grace. Next time, you say. But next time it will be the same. I mean, we're worried about Carter's health after we're gone. Linda would not end there. Yes, indeed. Weren't you a dietitian once? How can you say you know nutrition if you can't handle our meal plan? That's just ridiculous. Frustration and anger pulsed through my temples. In my mind, I cursed, "Shut up, you old fools. Just eat quietly." Their comments were baseless. I am a professional dietitian, and I carefully adjust the seasoning of the food to suit their age and health conditions. The meal that Mark called too salty had the same seasoning and amount of spices as the one he previously complained was too bland. It wasn't about the taste at all. They were just harassing me. My heart was constantly filled with irritation and anger. Then one day, feeling unwell from the stress and fatigue, I went to the hospital and discovered I was pregnant. Overjoyed, I returned home to share the news with Carter and the in-laws. But their reaction was far from joyful. In fact, the in-laws' comments were shocking. So, you're pregnant. Fine. But you're not quitting your job, they said. Yes, exactly. Being a dietitian isn't a job that would negatively affect your pregnancy, they added. Holding back my anger, I countered. But I want to take care of the baby. I was thinking of taking maternity leave a bit early. What are you talking about? You can't just decide that. You need to work, earn money, and contribute to the household. That's your role, they insisted. I had hoped Linda, being a woman, would understand, but that was a futile hope. That's right, there's still a lot left on this house's mortgage, she said coldly. But this house was built by Carter without. I started to say, unable to hold back any longer. What are you talking about? You live here too, don't you? They interrupted. Really, how shameless. You expect Carter to pay for everything. Stop being so entitled, they continued. I was so angry I couldn't speak. I glanced at Carter, but he seemed indifferent, just watching TV as if nothing was happening while I was being blamed. Carter said nothing at all. As days passed, the in-laws' behavior only escalated in defiance. I took early maternity leave for my health and the baby's sake. Predictably, this enraged the in-laws. It even led to me being coerced into signing divorce papers. If you do anything on your own again, these divorce papers will be filed. Linda threatened me, her eyes narrowed in anger. Carter remained silent. Even then, and no wonder, Carter's signature was already on the divorce papers. I was forced to sign it. It seemed he was okay with the idea of divorcing me. I never imagined facing such treatment, especially after just finding out about our child. Even without being forced, the thought of divorce had begun to cross my mind. Maybe that's better for this child. That thought crossed my mind more than once. Several months have passed since then. After enduring all the in-laws' harassment until the birth of my daughter Sophia, I safely gave birth. Nevertheless, my in-laws showed no affection for my daughter just because Sophia was a girl. Did the parents-in-law help with the childcare if so? Oh no, they did nothing, and to my surprise, Carter too. Carter changed Sophia's diaper. Hands are busy. I'll get my hands dirty. He went on making up reasons. Naturally, preparing and cooling milk was also impossible for him. No, I'll do it. Not I will ask the nurse to bring me. She is not mine nor Carter's child. Sophia cannot be but their child, but to my grief, whatever I ask for, Carter does not care about it. I might have gotten less angry if he helped when he was busy. When I was busy, he was watching TV. When I had time, he was playing with his phone doing nothing else. Childcare cooperation was not enough despite that. He had no interest in his own child. I was surprised by the huge disparity in our love for it. And the rain that seemed to echo my feelings continued. When will it stop raining? Continuously pouring only increased my despair, and I felt like I was locked in a closed lid. However, one day, as the rain continued, everything was the same. I heard an alarm as I was with Sophie on duty. The dam broke, said an authoritative voice from the outside world. This area's residents, please evacuate quickly. I shouted out, evacuate quickly, in English. What? Holding Sophie in my arms, I faded away while listening to "Oh, what is it, looking like that?" said Carter, who was still at home. I had a day off, but I hesitate, and I don't think it's about losing my sense of everyday life. He was still a baby on the sofa watching his cell phone. Apparently he was in brain activity. Apparently an extreme warning had been made today. The river flowing next to our house rose and showed the largest area I had ever seen. /hold on Carter. We have to evacuate quickly too. Ah, why is this alarm ringing? She beamed. There is no time to watch TV or check the screen. What's going on? Did you hear the sound of the police this morning? The dam was destroyed. Evacuate quickly. Seeing the situation, Carter suddenly jumped up and ran somewhere. Carter, where are you going? He did not answer and just was not. Feeling the threatening tension, Sophie started crying desperately loudly. Trying to keep the fear seized me with restraint, I began to hastily collect our belongings. A few minutes later, I appear in the entrance, holding Sophia. Outside, the rain poured from a bucket. The wind almost did not knock us off our feet. I saw Carter already outside, and Barth was preparing the car. I felt relieved. In vain did I think he had run away, leaving us harshly behind. Perhaps he still has feelings for us, and that's why he ran so quickly. I was mistaken, alas, very much. Mom, Dad, get into the car. You will not be swept away by a flood. Carter yelled, and in-law literally threw himself into the car. So, without any further ado, he was going to take us to the top. Wait, wait, Carter, don't abandon us. We need to, he replied to me. We are leaving this place. I had other things on my mind that also worried me. Take Sophia with you too. I was barely heard over the sound of the wind and the rain and the howling Sophia. Nevertheless, he heard. Carter's voice was carried away directly with the wind, carrying sand and rain. Not her, but you. My parents are above all. I can save them. Wait, Carter. My crying voice was lame. My most desperate appeals were in vain, and Sophia drove. It was impossible to catch up. I was wiped out. I knew then that I had given up. Yet, at the same moment, I felt hatred like I had never known before, and a burning passion consumed me as I screamed, "I damn you, ghastly creature!" A second later, the motor vehicle was already too far for me to see it properly, but I knew it would leave. The shouting and alarms were all over. The water was even more hectic, and its tumult overwhelmed me. The dam was going to burst. I felt ready to perish. "Sorry," I whispered to Sophia. Then, "Hey, are you all right?" I heard the man's voice from a truck I hadn't noticed parked next to mine, and he knocked his head out of the vehicle, showing it over me and abruptly, especially down on exit. "Where are your people at, sport? Did you attempt to cross and get stranded? Fine, get in fast. Thank you. The gods in one case abandon you and return you in kind." Sophia and I were brought to safe haven by this fellow, thanks to a person who in all probability saved many lives. As I gazed around from the ice loft, I saw the edifice in which we had been staying being taken by the river. "You are a fool. Are you aware of what you have just done?" And when I tried to reclaim it, I felt cold. I simply sat down for the reasoning process that followed. We stayed in the refuge for many days. People often helped me, aware that, as a new mother, I would need a lot of assistance. I nearly completely erased my previous memory and no longer felt Carter and most of the families consumed with the noble warmth of unknown sympathy. We have been searching for Sophia for some time, and the persons in charge should have located her since it was only a matter of many days after the water drained, and they allowed us to return temporarily. However, they didn't, and Sophia, Carter, Gary, even Gary's brother were all absent. When I entered the first floor of my not-so-new-anymore house, a tragic combination of water and mud greeted me. Most of our rooms were luckily on the second floor, and our belongings were dry. While running through the rooms trying to find anything else to take, getting what I needed, I stumbled upon the divorce papers. They were clean of the dirt around them, and anyone would easily see the clear file they were in. I had to act. I could not go back to living with those people, much less return to Boston without Sophia and raise her on my own. I did. After settling in the shelter for a while, I returned to Boston and filed the signed divorce papers. My old job took me back as there happened to be an opening. At that moment, I was truly grateful for my professional qualifications. For a while, I stayed at a friend's house in Boston. A few days later, perhaps feeling something was off due to the lack of contact, Carter finally reached out. "Hey, where are you? Come back already, come back." "No way, I'm already in Boston." Carter didn't like my calm response and raised his voice. "Hey, I told you it'd be divorced if you did anything on your own. Mom and Dad are furious." "Oh, really? Feel free." Did he think threatening divorce would make me submit? I was utterly done with Carter. I replied calmly, "You might be using divorce as a threat, but I've already filed the papers." Carter paused for a moment. "What? What are you talking about?" When I briefly returned home, I found our signed divorce papers and filed them. So, you and I are complete strangers now. It seemed to finally sink in for Carter. He was clearly shaken. Don't joke. I don't accept this. I never intended to. You know, as an adult, signing something means you agree to it. It seems your parents wanted it too, so it's good for everyone, I said, almost laughing. That was just a threat. A threat. I didn't let that word slip by. Don't be ridiculous. What kind of husband abandons his wife, and a man who would leave his own daughter in danger is not someone I want. Did you think I was some obedient slave always following your orders? Don't get ahead of yourself. Carter was clearly startled and flustered by my assertiveness. Hey, calm down, Grace. Let's meet and talk about this. There's nothing left to discuss with you. Prepare yourself. I'll be claiming compensation and child support in full. You and your worthless parents can go to hell together. I said that, hung up the phone, and immediately blocked him. The in-laws kept calling persistently, but I ignored every single call. Afterward, I hired a lawyer skilled in divorce cases and demanded a lump sum for compensation and child support. Carter ended up paying by taking on debt. Consequently, he couldn't afford the mortgage, and the house had to be sold. However, the flood-damaged house was refused by buyers, and only the land value minus demolition cost was paid, which wasn't much. Out of cash, out of ken, as the saying goes. The relationship between Carter, his parents, and him soured, and now they're living separately. Carter is drowning in debt. His parents are living off a meager pension. It's a steep fall from their previous lives. While I rely on my old work and a daycare about Sophia, everyone is warm. Everyone accepted it, and during the work, it was warm to hear that everyone understood about childcare. I am also grateful that I was able to work within reasonable limits. That stranger saved the papers in that corner of the muddy room at the same time, and the moment we were reunited, Cam. It wasn't a coincidence, it was a coincidence. Since then, I have really lived every second of my life. Sometimes I mutter in my mind that I almost died and apologize to Sophia. Sophia has been stepping up to be a healthy child every day. I will protect this child every time I see it. It is clear now that I am bowing down again.